Hello and welcome to my tutorial on parameter locking on the Sonicware Liven XFM. You may also notice that it says "and sweep" over here. That's because I'm also going to cover sweep. It was a topic that I was asked to cover and it's relatively simple and relatively quick, so I decided it's not worth a tutorial of its own right. Going back to parameter locking, first I think we have to understand what it means to parameter lock and why you might want to do it. So parameter locking is a form of parameter automation. Automation is a way of controlling a knob, that's to say making its value change over time in some predictable recorded manner. Jumping back to days when synthesizers didn't have presets, when they have purely analog panels, you would use the panel knobs to define your patch. Then when you were recording, you might modulate those knobs by hand to have interest added to the performance. These automations were adjusting the value of the knob, so as when you finished your take, you probably had to return that value to the value you intended for your patch. Automation in DAWs was modeled after this. In other words, in a DAW, once you record an automation for a given parameter, it is considered to be defined for the entire timeline for that track for that parameter. Therefore, if you go to the plugin and change that parameter, your DAW may have a feature where when you change the parameter it temporarily ignores the automation, but logically the automation defines it for all time. Parameter locking is a different paradigm. Parameter locking, rather than the automation existing for the entire timeline, it only exists for particular snippets of time. In this case, there are steps on a sequencer. That means that everywhere the automation is not defined, some other value of that parameter is used, and that value is what we're going to call the track value. So when I set a parameter and I play the keyboard, I have set the parameter value for that step. So say, for example, the filter cutoff here. If I then parameter lock that value for one particular step in the sequence, only when that step is played will the recorded value be utilized. At all other steps, the track value will change. What this means is I can adjust the track value and it will not be impacted by the parameter locked value except when that one step plays. Okay, this sounds a little bit abstract, but it was developed by Electron and utilized very effectively on Electron sequences. And the reason it exists is it turns out to be very convenient as a live performance and real-time sequencing feature. So jumping in, I've turned the synthesizer on and we will look at how parameter locking works. First, we're going to look at the parameter locking button. The parameter locking button has 4 different states that it can be in, indicated by colors. The default state is this green state. What green means is you can record parameter locks in the ordinary way, which I will illustrate, and parameter locks that are recorded will be played back when the sequencer plays back. The next mode is when it is orange. When it is orange, this means we are in patch locking mode. Now, patch locking mode is not strictly necessary, but it is a big convenience. So if I wanted to lock a parameter using a patch using a parameter locking, and I was in, say, the XLab engine, I would need to lock the bank, the sound, the other bank, the other sound for a particular step. So I would need to make 4 locks. Patch locking gives me a way of not having to make 4 separate locks, so it's a lot more convenient. The final state is, or second last state I suppose, is when the light is off. When the light is off, this means that you can record parameter locks in the conventional way of holding a button and turning, but no parameter locks will be played back. The final state we can get into, function parameter lock, the button is red. Red means that we are going to real-time record parameter locks. And I would say on this device, it's a little bit quirky compared to others, but I'm going to go ahead and illustrate all of those modes. So we're in green mode, but in order to record a parameter lock that has any value, we're going to need a sound. So let's pick, let's see, how about, okay, that's fine. So let me turn on the metronome. Okay, sounds fine. Metronome can come down now. So in this case, imagine I want to automate the filter. So first, I need to enable a filter. The filter has an envelope. I don't want to use the envelope, so I'm going to turn the depth down to 0. Play the sequence. So you can see I can make adjustments to the filter while it's playing, but there is nothing recorded in the sequence. What I'm going to do is pick a particular step, and I'm going to require that that step be open. So I'm going to hold down 13, turn the knob. Okay, you may think to yourself, well, nothing has changed here. Why? The reason is because I had set the track value for cutoff to 127, and I just locked the parameter for that step to 127. If I turn the track value down, so you can hear what's happening now is the filter is opening on that particular step and it's closed the rest of the time. Given that the filter is paraphonic, that means it gets applied to all of the voices. Sometimes this can give you some confusing outcomes, but for now this works perfectly well. Let's imagine while I want that step to be open, I want this step to be closed. So I'm going to set this step, press and hold, turn the cutoff knob to 20. So what I'll do is change the track value up. So you can hear it's opening here and it's closing there. So that's fundamentally what parameter locking is. Note that if you delete a note, any parameters locked to that step are also deleted. You can also press clear and parameter lock, and then all parameter locks are deleted. Now, I alluded to some confusion around how the real-time parameter lock recording works. And let me explain to you how this works on some other devices, specifically on the Korg Volcas. On a Korg Volca, when we go into parameter recording mode or automation or motion sequencer recording mode, when we enable motion sequencer recording, nothing happens. The synth is in a state where it is waiting for something to happen. What it's waiting for is for us to turn a knob. As soon as we start turning that knob, the value of that knob gets recorded to every step all the way around the sequence until it reaches the point it started, at which point motion recording goes off. So that means the value is always recorded for every step in the sequence. In contrast, the way that real-time recording is done here is the equivalent of, as the sequence is playing, me holding down each step to set the parameter while that step is playing, and then jumping to the next, and then to the next, and then to the next. This has a consequence, which is, if the value of the knob you are adjusting doesn't change between when the step started playing and when the step ended playing, no parameter lock will be recorded. So this can have some confusing results because you then go and adjust the track value and you would imagine that it wouldn't do anything at this stage, but it may, because some of the steps may not be parameter locked. So I'm going to demonstrate that. So function record to enable it. Okay, so I've recorded that. I'm going to go into regular parameter lock mode, and now I'm going to adjust the track value for cutoff. Okay, I don't think I've actually got any steps for which it wasn't recorded. So now I'm going to demonstrate explicitly what happens there. So I'm going to clear this automation. So I'm going to parameter lock, record. So notice I was only adjusting the knob for the first half of this parameter. So now these steps are affected by the track value because no parameter lock was recorded for those steps. Again, I find this a little bit confusing and it's not the most intuitive to me, but I'm sure you get used to it. Generically though, I tend to favor the explicit parameter lock recording versus the real-time parameter lock recording. I'm going to clear parameter lock to erase that automation. I'm going to clear these notes because we are now going to go and try the other parameter locking mode, which is patch locking. So this is most easy to demonstrate on a drum track because that's when you want the timbre to change frequently. So let me pick a sound, open the filter. Okay, so there are actually two ways that you can record the patch locked automation when patch locking is enabled. One way is that you can hold a step and play. Hold a step and play. So those two steps are now patch locked, which means if I change the patch, what they play will not change. So let me change to a snare. You may find that there are some strange glitches as you change patches if something is playing, because the patch locking only happens when the step starts. So if I'm adjusting the parameter while the step is playing or while the release of the patch is playing, the patch is going to change. So just be aware of that. I've changed the patch now to a snare. The other way I can record is in real time. So notice I've changed to hats, but we have the kick and the snare sound. So here's the hat. So let's try and record that. Okay, so you can hear that we've been able to record a series of patches. Just to illustrate what happens when we turn parameter lock mode off. So at this point, none of the parameter locks are being played. Parameter locking is on. So the patch locking is just parameter locking. It's just a convenience function. And just because you've patch locked, it doesn't mean that you can't do any of the other things that you would ordinarily do. So I think that concludes my description of parameter locking, but I was requested to discuss sweep mode. And I think sweep makes a lot more sense in the context of the 8-bit warps. Because those type of sweeps are really common in that style of music. But I'm going to illustrate how it works here. So first I'm going to jump to a patch. An organ patch probably works quite well. The parameters that we have enabled. First is the direction of the sweep. If you don't select a sweep direction, then sweeping doesn't happen. So I'm going to tell it to sweep upwards. If I deselect this, it goes to off. If I click octave down, my sweep would be downwards. So I'm going to use an upward sweep. If I play now, we already have a sweep happening. So what that sweep is doing is sweeping upwards by an amount. The amount is defined by the sweep range. 1 means 1 semitone. I can set it all the way up to 11 semitones, 1 octave, 2 octave. So if I select 1 octave, my sweep is now a full octave up. The other parameter you have available here is the curve of that sweep. By default, this is a linear curve. It means that the pitch goes up in linear time. We have 3 parameter possibilities. One is log. So log is going to approach the destination quickly and then slow down. So you hear a quick sweep and then it stays near the octave. The other option is exponential, which means it's going to approach slowly and then go up. So you hear little movement and then a lot of movement in exponential, logarithmic, a lot of movement, then a little movement, linear being in the middle. So I'm going to put it on logarithmic and show the final parameter here, which is the speed. So the speed is not really a speed parameter, but a time parameter. So when I set it to maximum, it's quite slow. When I set it to minimum, it's very fast. So when it's minimum, it can be used for making a small accent at the beginning of a note. When it's high, it becomes a feature that you may hear. So let me, as an example, let's switch it to down. Let's switch the range. The range is already set to an octave. Let's set the curve to log, I think is fine. The thing to remember about this though is the range is relative to the note you play. So when I play octave, the destination note is in the same key that I'm playing. But if I was playing with a different interval, let's say I set the interval to 5, then my sweep is currently going down. So that means if I wanted to play something in C minor, I would have to actually play F minor if I want the destination note to be in C minor. Okay, so I think that illustrates how sweep works. I don't find myself using it very often. If I need that type of sweep, usually I want a more refined control, and the more refined control is the pitch envelope in the mixer section of the FM edit mode. Okay, so I think that concludes this tutorial. I hope it was informative, and thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye.